Welcome to the Poke Bowl show. This is going to be our college basketball show. We have two hosts, amazing hosts for this show. I'm Michael Bolig, and my co-host is Dan Spielvogel. He's going to do his bracketology either on Sunday nights or Monday mornings, and I'm going to do mine on Fridays. So what is a Poke Bowl show? So we do a lot of college basketball stuff. We're big college basketball fanatics, and we're gonna do bracketologies, bubble watches. We're gonna film the selection show on March 17th. It's just gonna be all things college basketball. It's gonna be really exciting. And how did we get the name Poke Bowl Show? Well, I'm a Oklahoma State graduate. We're called our saying is go Pokes, and Dan, he is a USF Bull graduate, so that's how we got the name Poke Bowl. So let's get into uh this week's bracketology. This bracketology was made by me. A lot of people do Joe Lenardi brackets, Jerry Palm's brackets. For me and Dan, for the Poke Bowl show, we are gonna do our own bracketologies. It just adds a little more flair. It's something different, and it's gonna be really exciting stuff. So this is my bracketology I made today. So let's get into it. First off, we're gonna talk about the bubble picture. So if you see right here, the last four byes are Michigan State, Nebraska, Gonzaga, Wake Forest. Last four in Virginia, Seton Hall, Providence, Colorado. And first four out is Utah, K-State, A&M, Ole Miss. And next four out is Pitt, Cincy, Memphis, and St. John's. So that's a bubble picture right there. So let's go into this upper left regional. It's going to be the Midwest region. You see Purdue as a number one overall seed. They've been really incredible this year. They play the play-in of NC Central from the MEAC conference, and then Milwaukee, who is my pick to win the Horizon League. Yes, it's a little bit of a sleeper in the Horizon League, but they are looking good right now, and I think that they'll win that conference. Boise State versus FAU, two really good teams. Boise State's really looking good lately. FAU has kind of looked shaky as of late, but still very talented. As you know, they made the Final Four last year. BYU playing the plane of Providence, Colorado, going to be interesting stuff. Auburn versus Akron, Wisconsin versus Wake, Kansas versus Long Beach State. One thing I'll say is the 14 seeds in this bracket, I'm a real big fan of. And not many people have Long Beach State winning the Big West. I've seen most people saying UC Irvine, but this Long Beach State team is very good. You got Florida versus Nebraska, Marquette versus Northern Colorado. So let's go into this upper left region. I got Purdue winning versus either NC Central versus Milwaukee. I'm going to go with NC Central right there. We got Boise State versus FAU, and I'm going to go with uh, FAU right here. Boise State's looked really good, but I just can't trust them fully in March. So you got BYU versus Providence versus Colorado. So we're going to go in here and we're going to pick Colorado right here. And we're going to pick NC Central, like I said earlier. So I got Colorado beating Providence and playing BYU. I'm going to go with BYU right here. I think they're just a very good team. They shoot the three ball really well. Khalifa's looked really good. I remember watching the Baylor game just recently, and I was really impressed with Khalifa. Auburn versus Akron, very interesting game. I'm going to go with the favorite right here in Auburn. Don't worry, guys, there's going to be plenty of upsets coming up soon. Wisconsin versus Wake. I'm going to go with Wake. I'm a big fan of Hunter Sallis. I was a big fan of him as a recruit. It was unfortunate he never got his opportunity at Gonzaga, but I'm going to go with Wake Forest right here. Kansas versus Long Beach State. Wow. I know I'll upset some Kansas fans, but I'm going to go with Long Beach State here. McCullough is still a little questionable for the tournament. Kansas has looked shaky without him, Long Beach State, I'm a big fan of, so I'm going to go with Long Beach State right here. Florida versus Nebraska, I'm going to go with Florida. They're really impressive lately. Marquette versus Northern Colorado, I'm going to go with Marquette. I'm a big fan of Tyler Kolek. I'm a big fan of Oso Ego. I'm messing up the name, but Ego Bardo. So Purdue versus Florida Atlantic, this was a matchup we could have had last year if Purdue didn't get upset by Fairleigh Dickinson. I'm going to go with Purdue right here, though. BYU versus Auburn, really good matchup. I'm going to go with Auburn, really impressed with him. And although they lost to Tennessee this week, I was very impressed with him that whole game. Dalton Knecht just was going off, though, unfortunately, for those Auburn Tigers. Wake Forest versus Long Beach State. I am going with Wake Forest here. Like I said, I was a big fan of Long Beach State, but I just don't see them getting to the Sweet 16 with Wake Forest looking really good. Florida versus Marquette. I'm a big fan of this game. I think Florida could be a Cinderella team, but I'm going to go with Marquette. Purdue versus Auburn. I'm going to go with the slight upset. I'm going to go with Auburn. Just really impressed with them as a team. Wake Forest versus Marquette. I am going with Marquette. I'm, like I said, big fan of Tyler Kolek. I think this is Shaka Smart's year to make a run. He's been disappointing ever since the 2011 Final Four run with VCU. But I'm going to go with Marquette. Auburn versus Marquette, really interesting game. I'm going to go with Auburn here, though. I'm just very impressed with him. And although they're a 4 seed, I just really like their path to the Final Four in that region. So we're going to go to the upper right region right here. We got Quinnipiac versus Southern as a play-in, and I'm going to go with Southern right here. I'm a big fan of Southern. I get one of their star players are injured currently, but I'm just a big fan of Southern this year. And they're going to beat UConn here. Or no, sorry, UConn is going to beat Southern here. My bad. We got Oklahoma versus Colorado State. Honestly, not a big fan of either of these teams. I am an Oklahoma State grad, so I'm not ever going to be a big fan of OU, but I'm just not sold on either of these teams. I'm going to go with OU, though, in this matchup. Kentucky versus McNeese. I know a lot of people are really high with McNeese, but their conference just is super weak this year. I get they got a great record, but they're playing a bunch of nobodies. And Kentucky, yes, they have a terrible defense, but that offense is so good. We're going to go with Kentucky right here. Illinois versus Samford. I'm big fan of both of these teams. I think both teams are very good. I despise Brad Underwood for what he did at Oklahoma State, but we're going to go with Illinois, and we're going to see a very intriguing matchup of Kentucky versus Illinois in the round of 32. South Carolina versus South Florida. My co-host Dan, he is a South Florida grad. I was about to go to South Carolina, so I always have a soft spot with South Carolina. It's a very interesting game. Two teams that have exceeded expectations significantly. Both coaches deserve to be mentioned in the Coach of the Year race. I am going to go with, though, South Florida in this matchup. I really think either team could make a run in March in a couple weeks, but I'm just going to go with South Florida in this particular matchup. Baylor versus High Point, another interesting 3 versus 14 matchup that I could see going either way. But I'm going to go with Baylor. I just love Scott Drew. I think Jacoby Walter is a beast. Misi is an incredible big man. Ray J. Davis is an incredible guard as well. We're going to go with Baylor here. Texas Tech versus Michigan State. I know a lot of people are always going to go with Michigan State in these types of games, and usually they're right. Michigan State usually is incredible in those 7-10 games and go on a deep run when they do. They just haven't looked good this year, though. And Texas Tech's looked shaky lately, but I'm going to go with Texas Tech. McCaslin's a great coach. Pop Isaacs is a great player. And we're going to go with UNC over Stetson. RJ Davis, one of the best players in the country. No, enough said. They're going to beat Stetson pretty easily. UConn versus Oklahoma. Usually I'll go with the upset here for reigning champs ever since 2017, I believe. All the reigning champs have lost in the round of 32 or round of 64. But I just don't like this matchup. For OU, I think UConn wins pretty easily. If it was another 8-9 game, I would consider an upset for sure. Kentucky versus Illinois, really interesting game, like I said last round. But I'm going to go with the offense at Kentucky to pull off this 5/4 slight upset. South Florida versus Baylor, great game. I'm going to go with Baylor here, though. I just think that they have the experience on their side over South Florida. South Florida, though, is very dangerous because they have nothing to lose at this point. Texas Tech versus UNC. I'm going to go with UNC here. RJ Davis, like I said last round, just going to take over several games in March. UConn versus Kentucky. It's going to look a little chalky, but we're going to go with UConn here. Baylor versus North Carolina. Like I said, a little chalky, but we're going to go with North Carolina. UConn versus UNC is a very interesting game. I'm excited about this matchup if it comes true. We're going to go with UConn in this matchup, though. They've just looked super incredible as of lately in this year. I get they lost to Creighton maybe a week or two ago, but overall, this team's just super incredible. So we're going to go in the bottom right region here, and it is the South region played in Dallas. As you can see, some of my conference champion picks, and I see a lot of really incredible dark horses teams in this region as well. We're going to go with Houston over North Dakota here, though. We're going to go with this game is actually really tough. I'm a big fan of Boo Buie, but this Nevada team with Alford as the coach has been incredible. Big fan of Nevada, but we're going to go with Nevada here, actually. St. Mary's versus Grand Canyon. Two really good teams. St. Mary's started out the season super cold, but they've come along and are finally meeting the expectations I had on them before the year. Grand Canyon, Bryce Drew, incredible coach. Grand Canyon's looked really well. Lately, though, they've kind of slipped up, losing to Abilene Christian. We're going with St. Mary's in this matchup. Creighton versus Vermont. I'm not really high on Creighton. I'm going to go with Vermont in this matchup. They've looked really good in the American East like they always do. Extremely experienced team. We're going to go with Vermont over Creighton. Dayton versus Indiana State's an interesting matchup. I am absolutely in love with Indiana State this year. Robbie Avila, Conwell, the list goes on. They got 4 or 5 incredible scores on that team. We're going to go with Indiana State, which have one of the best offenses in college basketball. Duke versus Charleston. I think Charleston's a great team, but I think Duke is just way too much for Charleston. TCU versus New Mexico. I will say it. New Mexico is my dark horse this year to make a run. I'm a big fan of JT Toppin, House, Mashburn, Richard Pitino is an incredible up and coming coach. I'm a big fan of New Mexico. I'm going to pick them over TCU. Tennessee versus Western Illinois. Yes, I got Western Illinois in the OVC. Most people are going to say, what about Morehead State? What about Arkansas Little Rock? There's other teams out there that have a real strong case in the OVC, but I got Western Illinois winning that conference. But Tennessee is way too much to handle. I'll just say, usually I'm not high on Tennessee. This year, though, I'm extremely high on them. They usually lack an offensive bucket getter, but this year with Dalton Connect coming from Northern Colorado, he is looking incredible. He is one of the a player of the year candidate. If it wasn't for Zach Edey, he'd be my pick for player of the year. This Tennessee team is doomed for a big run in March. We're going to go with Houston over Nevada here. That defense at Houston is incredible. They have experience. It's just going to be too much for Nevada to handle. St. Mary's versus Vermont, we're going to go with St. Mary's. I'm a big fan of Mahaney at St. Mary's. Bennett is an incredible coach. This team is going to beat Vermont here. Indiana State versus Duke. We're going to go with the upset. I'm going to upset a bunch of Duke fans, but I don't care. Indiana State, the best offense or second best offense in college basketball, in my opinion, behind Kentucky. This Indiana State team is incredible. They are looking to possibly make a Loyola Chicago type run in 2018. This team is really good. New Mexico versus Tennessee. I'm a big fan of New Mexico, like I said, but Tennessee is just too much to handle. I'm going to go with Tennessee here. Houston versus St. Mary's. I'm going to go with a little bit of a chalky pick here with Houston. Hate saying this, but this is the time when Indiana State's run ends with Tennessee beating them. Tennessee versus Houston, very interesting game, but I'm going to go with Tennessee here. We're going to the West Regional, and before that, let's get our play-in pick, which is Virginia versus Seton Hall. I'm going to go with Seton Hall. I'm a big fan of Kadari Richmond, and I think he's just an incredible player. Arizona versus Merrimack. Arizona's got this one. Mississippi State versus Texas. I'm a big fan of Chris James as a coach. Loved him at New Mexico State. Tolu Smith is one of the best big men in the country. We're going to go with Mississippi State here. Clemson versus James Madison. I'm a big fan of James Madison this year. We're going to go with him over Clemson. San Diego State versus Cornell. I'm going to go with San Diego State. They finally showed that they can win in March Madness by making the national championship last year. Big fan of Letty. Big fan of their coach, Ductor. I think that San Diego State's going to win this one, although I do like Cornell in the Ivy League a lot. Washington State versus Seton Hall. Oh, I love this matchup. Kadari Richmond is one of my favorite players in the country, and I'm really wanting to pick Seton Hall, but I really think Washington State has a chance to make a big run as well. I don't care, though. I'm going to go with the upset here with Seton Hall. Pulling off the upset, we always have to have a play-in team winning in the round of 64. It just always seems to happen. We're going to go with Seton Hall here. Alabama versus Sam Houston State. We're going to go with Alabama. Not a big fan of them this year, but I just think they're going to be too much for Sam Houston. Utah State versus Gonzaga. Gonzaga's had a down year, but I actually like them in this position. Being a more sleeper-oriented team, we're going to go with Gonzaga here. Iowa State versus Colgate. Big fan of Iowa State this year. We're going to go with them over Toothpaste U. Arizona versus Mississippi State. We are going to go with Arizona here. I get Tommy Lloyd's been very disappointing in March in his career, but this team is so good. I'm a big fan of Johnson. I think Kylan Boswell is one of the best freshmen in the country. It's just a good oriented team. Ballo and Caleb Love as well are two incredible players. We're going to go with Arizona here. James Madison versus San Diego State. I like the upset here with James Madison. Seton Hall versus Alabama. I'm going to ride with Kadari Richmond here in Seton Hall. I get that it's a bold prediction, but I'm a big fan of Seton Hall this year as a Cinderella team. Gonzaga versus Iowa State. We're going to go with Iowa State here. I would be tempted to pick Gonzaga, but I'm just going to go with Iowa State in this matchup. Arizona versus James Madison is a very interesting matchup. I'm going to go with the safe pick with Arizona, though. Ooh, Seton Hall versus Iowa State is another great matchup. I'm going to go with the upset, though. We're going to ride with the Cinderella story of Kadari Richmond here. And now we got Arizona versus Seton Hall. Oh, I am feeling a upset here. A Cinderella story with Seton Hall and Kadari Richmond. If you haven't watched Kadari Richmond this year, you're missing out, but you're going to quickly learn if they make it in March Madness that this dude is an absolute stud. He is just all around great player. He's similar to Vontarius Woolbright from Western Carolina, which is another one of my favorite players. He's just a bulldog type player. He's do it all type player. He scores, he passes, he rebounds. He's incredible. We're gonna go with Seton Hall in this matchup. And now we have a 4 seed versus 11 seed and a 1 seed versus 2 seed. We're going to go with 4 seed Auburn in this matchup. I just think it's a time for Seton Hall's run to end. And we're going to go with another SEC team to pair up with Auburn with Dalton Connect. And we just saw this matchup earlier this week, and Dalton Connect scored 39 points, I believe. And he's going to do it again in the national championship. Give me Tennessee over Auburn for your national championship.